Hey, this is Scott, and if you've been watching the channel, you know I've been talking about long lenses. Long lenses on the Panasonic, long lenses on the Fuji, and I have been comparing them and kind of thinking about IQ versus weight. I kind of had a little epiphany of thought of, well, I have this old lens here, not terribly old, this 50 to 230 that I got with my original Fuji XT20 in a kit. And I've basically been ignoring it entirely since I bought the 70 to 300. And as you can see, it's quite a bit smaller in both dimensions. And it's 50 to 230 versus 70 to 300. It's also pretty much a half pound lighter. So as far as a carry, it's the lighter, smaller carry. Now, my thought on this is like if I'm going on vacation, and going back to the reason that I kind of fell in love with my Fuji XT20. It was so light, it was easy to carry with me. It wasn't loading me down, wasn't a shoulder bag, giving me a backache. It was just a nice small kit. So if you're like a travel photographer or you're traveling, going to cities, things like that, not safari, obviously. You're going on safari, you want a big, cool lens that's going to bring those animals up close. So the 50 to 30, not a good choice. But I started thinking about it and going, well, maybe 50 to 230 is actually the better range for that kind of general travel photography than a 70 to 300 is. And if I can actually save a pound and space in my bag, just how good is the 50-230? Now, I didn't review it, so you can go back and look at that review, and I said, hey, it's a sexy lens, it's supposed to be their cheap lenses, and, build quality isn't up to the 70 to 300 standard, very plasticky, but I'm not offended by that. Some people just hate plastic. These are new, technically great plastics. They wouldn't even use them if they didn't work. They work. People shouldn't worry about it so much. I've even had other cameras like this one that have plastic mounts. I've never had one break, but then I take good care of my gear. And if you do, they sell them online, so you can get a new mount if you had to, and better, the end of the lens should break than your camera. So everything's relative there. So yes, it's plastic. So if you hate plastic, just turn this off. You don't even have to listen to anything more. But if you're not offended by plastic and a relatively cheap lens, you can continue on this little journey of thought. So, using the argument of I think 50 to 230 is a better range for general travel photography than a 70 to 300. Yeah, extra reach is always nice, but as far as being into the zone of usability, 50 to 230 is probably, to me, better than starting off at 70, which is really like 100. So I think it's probably a more functional for that kind of use. And again, we're going to save half pound, we're going to save space. But here's the question. By doing that, what am I going to lose? Am I going to lose IQ? And that's where I decided that as I was putting all these lenses up against each other, why don't I put that 70 to 300 up against the 50 to 230 within its range of what it can deliver and see how it compares. So that's what we're going to do now. We're going to go and take a look at some pictures, just some general pictures around the house. It's been cold, not northern cold, Florida cold, but still cold. So not as much to photograph. So I just did some general pictures, but let's take a look and let's decide how much better is the IQ on the 7300. My expectations would be that it would be better. It's a newer lens. I definitely think the focus is a little better. The IS should probably be better, and obviously it has some reach, but otherwise, let's compare. Okay, so here are our images. We're going to start out with this little picture of the gnome and a little color checker chart. I have set these up so that the 230, 50 to 230, as you can see here, is on the 50 to 230 XC, and the 70 to 300 is on the right. So your right and 50 to 230, your left. So, looking at these from here, they look pretty much the same. Let's go ahead and full zoom in and match them up. Again, these weren't taken at exactly the same time, so there will be little variations in light and sunshine that were out of my control. So the fact that this is a little blown out, I don't think we can blame that on the lens. That is probably just the sun got a little bit brighter. Pull this down here. And again, there could be little variations in focus. But for the most part, this looks a little sharper on this side. 7300 in this picture looks a little bit sharper, but not particularly much. You know, cat hair on there. Again, down here looking at this little type, pretty much looks the same. Now, this sharp here, so this is a little more front. This one looks like it might have been a little bit more back focused in comparison. So that may account for some focus variation. Again, if you haven't seen this before, when I am doing this, it'll take a second or two for the screens to update. So if you see a little cursor moving up here, that's why one may look a little fuzzier compared to the other until they both update. So yeah, I mean, slightly more for the 7300, I guess, but you know, it's not, like I said, not a ton, but definitely a little bit better. And I suppose should look into the corners a little bit. There we go. And I was having some tea. And from here, these look about the same. Again, I tried to match them pretty good. Got 128 millimeters over here and 127 over here. And they're pretty, a little bit variation in color, but not much. So this one's a little bit darker, which probably we could go in and pump up the exposure a little bit, but otherwise look pretty similar. Now, technically, this one is shot through a fence. You can see the fence here and here a little bit. Both ended up being 3200 ISO since I was shooting it at 1/500th of a second. And this one's 300 and this one's 230, so I do not have a match there. But this one at 230 might, at its longest, might be looking a little bit better than the 70-300 at its longest. They're both picking up the texture of the flag fairly well. So again, variations, yes, nothing huge. It's my overhead umbrella. Both got the texture in there. Color seems to be just about identical. Obviously, we are looking at 300 millimeters below and 230 up top. So we know that this one is the 50 to 230, and this one down here is the 70 to 300. So again, similar. Fence post. We can see some background blur here. Similar, looks a little crazy in there. This one is definitely the 70 to 300, and the one on top is the 50 to 230. And if we zoom in, again, give it a slight edge. Again, a slight edge, which could just account for focus to the 70 to 300. But no, we can say it's probably a little bit better. But on your average picture, are you going to see it? Probably not. And here, kind of showing this is 50 millimeters. This is 70 millimeters. So this is the 50 to 230 at its smallest. This is the 70 to 300 at its smallest zoom point. And if we go in, obviously some lighting variation there, but for the most part, similar. And you know, it's nice to see the colors are similar, not a lot of variation there as well. And then I just kind of kept going up the scale. So this is 102 to 105. Didn't get an exact match. The lower one again is the 70 to 300. The upper one is the 50 to 230. Looking at these, looks pretty similar. I might give an edge in the face and his basket to the 50 to 230. Again, color, everything else looking pretty much the same. Okay, so then jump up again. Now we're at 136 versus 127. Again, slight exposure variations. I could maybe give this middle range to the 50 to 230 again. Let's look at some more spots, but again, yeah, it's so close. You know, it's in all these comparisons, I've been surprised at just how close things have been and how it's really splitting hairs on these modern lenses. Back out, so pretty similar. Now here we are going to the maximum for the 50 to 230 up here at 230, and the maximum for the 70 to 300, so we're at 300 down here. Again, colors looking pretty similar to me, and text is nice and sharp on both of them, so IQ wise, nothing to complain about. Now, this little woodpecker just happened to be. So I got him with the 50 to 230, but not fast enough to change lenses and get him over here. But we basically have this tree to compare. Again, 230 here. This one's at 199. I'd say that could be a matter of focus point. But we definitely have an edge, especially looking here at the 70 to 300. So that gives you a decent idea. That doesn't look too good. Compared to that, I don't know if that's a focus. Yeah, I think that's maybe a focus issue. The bird looks pretty good. So maybe we're focusing on him. That's the problem. Can't know exact. This is the first picture that seems to have a real variation, but I think it's just a matter of where it was focusing. Let's see if we can find the exact same leaves. Oddly enough, no. So there you have it. I go back to this first one. It seemed to be one of the better examples. So again, almost a match. 230 versus 231. So this, the 50 to 230 at its max, and this at 7300 set at 231, which gave us an f6.4 versus an f6.7, both at 1/500th of a second, both at ISO 800. And yeah, again, I give the edge to the 70 to 300, but it's not a huge variation. And I should note on all of these that I gave them all a structure increase of 20, just so you know what it looks like without. There, I took it off of the 50 to 230, and here I'll take it off the 70 to 300. So I've just found, especially when I was using the 70 to 300, that the Fuji seems to like to get a little bit more structure. And this is on... like I said, look at the pictures. I was surprised. I really thought the 70 to 300 was going to kick its ass. But no. And again, I shouldn't be surprised because I had reviewed that 50 to 230 and I didn't think it was too bad. Obviously, there's other considerations. Focusing speed in the IS, I didn't find the focusing speed to be drastically longer. That sometimes the 70 to 300 was snappier to focus, but sometimes would overshoot and come back, whereas the 230s seem to be a little bit more paced, but it just got there and stopped. So, edge to the 70 to 300, a huge monster edge? I don't think so. Now, the other thing is IS. I didn't really test that. We're going to just make it a given that the IS is better. But the real thing we were looking at was the IQ, because that's like my big question was, would I lose something? And again, you know, when you look at one lens all by itself, they all look pretty good. When you compare them against each other, that's when differences seem to pop up. And I mean, you were there looking at them with me. I didn't see a huge difference. You know, I'll give an edge, even if it's, you know, I'm making it up in my mind, that the 7300 was perhaps a little bit better. But it'd be minor. You know, I was amazed, you know, color-wise, everything. They pretty much, like, matched up. And in general, the IQ was looking good to me. I found nothing to complain about. So, yeah, if you're willing to give up a little performance to save weight and space, I think the 50 to 230 is still an excellent choice. Now, again, it is missing the aperture ring, and some people are like really into that. To me, I don't really care. And again, it is a more plasticky lens, but it's still go back and look at my old review on XC lenses, because optically they're still pretty good. Their mechanics and what they're made of might be a little bit below the middle world, but otherwise they're just good lenses. And this kind of like proved it. IQ wise, not a lot to complain about. And so I think if it was me and I was going on vacation and I was looking for ultimate lightweight, I'd probably get the 5230, because it's like half the price of the 70 to 300. You're only losing 70 millimeters in reach, so it's not the end of the world. And on top of that, you're starting off at 50, which I find a little bit more useful. So to me, I would bring the 50 to 230, because again, you buy them used, you can get them for like a third the price, and of course there's always a potential risk of losing, stealing, whatever, a lens on vacation, and I'd much rather lose a cheap one that has good IQ than an expensive one that might have ever so slightly better. So everybody to their own. To me, I'm keeping the 50 because if I went to sell it, I only get like a couple $100 for it. So why would I even think about it? I think it's a great choice. And obviously, IQ wise, I think it holds up. Please, that's my opinion. Tell me what you think from you looking at the pictures. And again, sorry that they're not world class images. They're just general run of the mill stuff. But I think there's enough there to tell. If you liked it, please give me a thumbs up, and I'd love it if you subscribed. And I'll see you next time. Bye.